All right. Okay, let's go ahead. Sorry. We're going to have, actually, we'll wait on Nick giving us an update on the bill till we actually get into the hearing. I think Brad Newswander is going to, you have information that has been forwarded to you from the Department of Education. This issue has been around for a while. I know I've worked on it in the past. And I know even with my efforts, a lot of school districts are doing this. I know Valley Center, my hometown, this is a requirement for graduation. And so based on the fact that it's still voluntary, there's just a lot of districts that still aren't doing it. And I think that's the focus of House Bill 2301. I felt like it would be beneficial even before the hearing just to get just a little bit of history. And Brad is, you have his, his information, but I just wanted to let him speak briefly to some of that history, what the current state is as far as how financial literacy is being taught across the board in the state of Kansas. So, Brad, the floor is yours. And again, you don't have to go through, all of the information you provided us, just kind of, hit a high level as far as for new committee members, especially on a little bit of the history and where we're at right now on this topic. The floor is yours, Brad.
Thanks, Chairman Hubert. And I like how you politely said you've got 2 minutes.
No, you have 3, 4, no, 5. You take what you need.
Well, just because there are a lot of new committee members, just in context, the 2015 legislative session, you have a copy of the, I don't know if they call it, or can you hear me okay?
No, not very well. Try again.
Okay, is this any better?
Way better. We're gonna find a middle ground there.
Okay.
Right.
Well, I can't talk any slower. But I'll try to talk softer. But so what I'm going to share with you is really since the 2015 session, when at that time, Chairman Hyland and of this committee and Chairman McNeese of the state board sent out I don't know, not necessarily a resolution, but you have a copy of it. So then in 2016, I provided you an information sheet that starts out with what we learned from what schools were currently doing, because the resolution wanted to know or wanted to have them implement a policy. So we followed up a year later to find out where they were in that process. We also looked, and I'm not going to read through the data, but you can kind of scan through. We also found that the vast majority, 90%, was happening in high schools, but there was, quite a few, 38% of the districts also had it in the middle school. And then number 3 just kind of talks about the different ways that whether they embed it in the curriculum, whether it's a standalone course, or whether they required it for high school graduation. If you look at the back of that sheet, I think that's probably more telling because we track annually 2 things. One, how many students are completing financial literacy courses. And you can see just from 2016 to 2020, we went from 8,900 to 13,700. So we're pleased with the growth that we're seeing, as well as if you look in the graph, and this can kind of be confusing. So I just want to share with you, this is every year we map how often do we see those courses mapped to those pathways. I can give you an example. The reason some go up and down a little bit is because you may have some smaller districts that only offer that course on a even year number because they just don't have enough students. So they give the kids 2 times during their high school career the opportunity to take it. But the main thing is we're seeing growth in the business finance. And then we also created the new pathway business management and entrepreneurship that has personal finance mapped in it. We've seen quite a bit of growth in that. There's a fact sheet that just provides you a little more information about the resources that we provide. We have a pretty robust personal financial literacy website with a lot of resources. It talks about the standards that the state board adopted for personal financial literacy. And with that, that's a high level brief just to kind of bring you up to speed in the last 4 or 5 years.
Thank you, Brad. Just a quick question. Across the state, what is your, if this is just a gut feel or swag, are all students at least having some exposure to financial literacy classes or information? Do we have gaps where that, in some schools where that's not happening right now? Or, if you could just, I think you talked about that briefly, but I just wanted you to maybe expand a little bit as far as, no exposure to any type of financial literacy to, like you said, the requirement for graduation, and discuss that a little bit. Thank you, Brad.
Thanks, Chairman Hubert. We had planned on doing a follow-up survey. The person that leads this work no longer works here, but we hope to update some of the survey numbers from 2016. I would confidently say that our school districts have the coursework either embedded in the curriculum, mostly because if you look at this, 279 districts have it embedded in or at the high school level. We have seen growth in course offerings and students taking it, but we do not have an update on how many school districts have gone to requiring it. So I would say if it's not required, then we would have no way to know if 100% of the kids, while they are exposed to it and have it offered, whether or not they chose to take the course.
Okay. Well, and like I said, even just looking at this fact sheet, this says 91.8 high school instruction, but 38.5 at the middle and junior high. So even best case scenario, there's still a segment, a little over 8% that aren't receiving any instruction from what I can read here. So further questions from the committee for Brad before we get into testimony? Representative Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Brad. Question, since this isn't required right now, but is there some follow-up done with students to see if this has been beneficial for them or in some way effective? I know what kind of the goal is kind of make them smarter consumers and savers and things like that, but I didn't know if there's some way to assess if it's really effective.
Thank you, Representative Schreiber. Really, the only way at a state level we could do that is if you wanted to report on how my son and daughter did, because we don't have direct access. Now, maybe they might at the local level do follow-ups. I know when I was a former superintendent, I would meet with all freshmen when they went off to post-secondary. I would bring them in over Christmas have a nice meal with them and just get update not only on financial literacy, but on math and all that. But from a state level, we don't have a way to connect with students beyond just knowing whether or not they were able to go on to post-secondary and experience success, but not relative to this.
All right, I'm going to try using that. That didn't work, so. Further questions? I see Representative Stogg still.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I remember this discussion we had last year, and by the way, I wanted to say I think it's very encouraging that we're seeing upward numbers in the number of students that are being exposed to financial literacy courses and so on in their school districts and so on. I think that's great. I think the question that several of us had last year that was, do we have enough qualified teachers who are to teach these courses in school districts all across the state? I know, you know, having kind of a background in this sort of thing, I don't think that you could expect an English teacher to teach a course in personal finance and so on like that. So what is the status of finding qualified teachers that can actually teach this course effectively?
Great question, Representative Stogsfield, and you're correct. With personal financial literacy, with computer science, with any course that is content specific, that is one of the biggest challenges for school districts is to find.
You're not speaking, please mute your mic. Continue. We lost you, Brad.
Are we there now?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So that is the biggest challenge that school districts face, whether it's relative to any specific content area, especially if it's traditionally an elective, and that is finding qualified teachers. While I know a lot of them do very unique and teach it, but it would not count towards what we would consider a credit unless it fell into one of the specific courses and taught by a certified license, not only licensed, but certified in that area. And that is one of the biggest challenges, Representative Stogstill, that school districts face is, and we have a lot of them that do offer it, but it does not show up on our end because they were not a licensed teacher. So we don't capture that.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm not seeing any further hands raised at this time for Brad, so I was trying to stall a little bit to give time for Adam to show up, but I think we can move on at least to Nick Myers giving us an overview. With that, committee, I'm going to open up the hearing on House Bill 2301 and give the floor to Nick Myers to give us an overview of the bill. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, House Bill 2301 would amend current law, and I'll start with what current law requires. The current statute requires a state board of education to develop state curriculum standards for personal financial literacy within, as you are aware, the existing math and math curriculum or other appropriate subject matter. The state board is also encouraged to encourage schools to select textbooks that contain educational provisions relating to personal financial literacy. It's also required to provide for questions relating to financial literacy on the assessments given in math or social studies. So what this bill would do, House Bill 2301, it would require the State Board of Education to develop specific curriculum standards for a personal financial literacy course for students in grades 11 and 12. The course would be required to cover the following topics that are listed in the bill. So saving and investing, credit and debt, financial responsibility and money management, and insurance, risk management, and income. So this bill would require each school district that offers a personal financial literacy course to adopt a policy that allows a student to fulfill 1/2 of a math credit required for graduation. And the bill would also require all public post-secondary educational institutions to adopt a policy to recognize the half math credit for admissions purposes. And committee, if the committee chooses to work the bill, I would suggest a technical amendment in the title. I believe the title says it does not refer to college admissions policies, and instead it refers to college credit policies. But I would just recommend that the title be changed to refer that this is talking about college admissions policies. And I'd be happy to answer questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Questions from the committee? Not seeing any hands in here. Any hands online? Not seeing anything on my screen. Wave your hand online if you have a question. Right, Representative Estes, the floor is yours.
Nick, could you please tell me how many high school math credits are required for graduation and what you know, or these might be better questions for Brad, but what usually composes the classes that students take to meet that number?
Yeah, I'm glad we have Brad here. I would have to defer to the department on that.
I would be happy to answer that, Chairman, if you so wish.
Goes without saying. Thank you.
Okay, so the state board requires 3 credits of math for graduation. And in that, it says that it shall include geometric and algebraic concepts. It does not prescribe what classes they have to take, because we have a lot of kids that'll take Algebra 1 in 8th grade. So then they would take geometry, Algebra 2, and maybe a higher level. So it just says geometric and algebraic concepts in 3 units.
And typically it takes 1 academic year to meet 1 unit?
That is correct. The semester is considered a half unit.
Okay, so a student could fulfill their requirements in the first 3 years of high school and still be able to take this in their senior year and still have half a semester where there's not a required math course for them?
That is correct. We have a lot of students that'll take 4 years of math, especially if they're going into an engineering or a science. So that is correct. Many students go on and take another course their senior year.
Further questions, Representative Schreiber?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if this would be for Brad or Nick, but at the end of the bill brief, says the bill would also require all public post-secondary education institutions to adopt a policy to recognize this half math credit. Do we do that for some of the other credits? Do we direct post-secondary to recognize certain credits?
I am not aware. You know, that would be a question maybe for the Board of Regents, but to my knowledge, I don't know where we say that they have to accept a specific, because each one of them is unique.
All right, further questions from the committee? And I am not seeing any other hands. All right, committee, we're going to go ahead and keep getting into, we have some people here, and then also, I'm going to go ahead and skip down and let Dr. Walt Chappell, who is a proponent, go ahead and give his verbal testimony now. And believing by faith that the carrier or the proponent is going to get here soon out of his other committee. Walt, if you're ready.
I am. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, we can. So.
Excellent. It's
Go
always
ahead
good to see you, Chairman. Been a while, but I very much appreciate the self. As many of you know, served on the State Board of Education back in 2009 through 2012, and have worked on this issue all during those years, both as a board member and bringing this bill forward since at least 2010. So this isn't the first time we've had a bite at this apple. I'd like to bring up a very simple phrase we use out in farm country. And that's one I'm sure you've heard before, which says, he who pays the piper calls the tune. Now, as elected officials of the taxpayers of this state, you're the ones under Article 6, Section 1, which I've attached to my testimony. You're the ones that have the authority and responsibility under the Constitution to make sure that schools do what the taxpayers want. Not the schools deciding for themselves, but you have the authority and have exercised that authority, as you can see in the statutes that I've provided to you since 1919. If you were able to see that far back in my testimony, it shows that 72-3217 shows it first started in 1919, and it is the basis of which the amendment we have, and it's actually the part of the bill that's been submitted to the Education Committees ever since 2012. And that is that it's part of the requirements for learning American history, for example, or Kansas history, or any other subject about how we govern ourselves, and what it means to be a citizen in this country. And the legislature has made those requirements in the past. They are taught in our schools without any problems. And there should not be any problem with this case as well. Our kids are coming out of school almost illiterate in terms of how to deal with their own finances. And we have right now, the highest debt in our nation is student loans. They get these credit cards, they think they're neat, they go out to have their spring break, they go out and get a pizza, they party, whatever they're going to do during college years. And my God, they're stuck with a bill, plus the high tuition that goes along with the institution of higher education. Those tuition rates need to come down, as you all know, and I agree. But I would like to ask you to think very clearly about the objective ahead of you. When I served on the state board, I asked Diane DeBacker, our commissioner, is a course in financial literacy a half credit for math? She said, yes, we've been doing that for a number of years already. Now that was 2010. What this bill does is codify that and say, yes, indeed, it is a math credit and you can apply it towards graduation. Now the data that has been presented by Brad has been pretty clear. He shows only 26% of the school districts are actually requiring it for graduation. Only 26%. When Clay Arndt heard this bill back in 2012, that was almost exactly the same. Almost just a quarter of the school districts are requiring it. So unless you go to a high school that requires this course, it's very unlikely you'll have it offered as an elective or that you'll have an opportunity to take it at all. So you're left to the whims of all the creditors out there, the payday loans, the various folks that say, here's a credit card. Oh, by the way, we don't tell you it's going to be 25% interest. These kids are really left on their own, basically, as adults to figure out how to move forward. So what I'm suggesting here in my testimony under number 6, I'm pointing out that the bill right now and the statute was passed 3236. It's in front of you. It's been modified since 2003. The first time this bill came up, it was modified and it passed into law in 2003. And here we are 18 years later, and we still don't have this course being taught on a regular basis to our students. So all those 18 years, we've had one reason after another why, oh, we can't do this. It's too much trouble. It takes too much time. And oh, by the way, they might want to be an engineer and they won't have an opportunity to take that additional math credit. This is a one semester course. There's already curriculum developed by the Kansas Council for Economic Education. They've been in existence over 30 years in our state. The Kansas Banking Commission, the Securities Exchange Commission, the Kansas Treasurer's Office has coursework. Dave Ramsey has a course that I think was used with the current commissioner, Randy Watson, in McPherson, Kansas. They have it required and have been requiring it for at least 5 or 6 years, if not more. In Wichita, Kansas, we require it as a graduation requirement, and the curriculum is already there. The point is, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have an opportunity to teach a class that has really benefited so many hundreds of students, thousands by now, but it's not offered unless you actually go to a school where it's required. I ask you, please, take a look at the amendment that is going to be presented when you work this bill. It goes back to the original statute, and it says very clearly that this is going to be a required course for graduation. It's simple ability to have the teachers that teach math. They don't have to have additional instruction. They go ahead and teach that semester course to every one of their 11th and 12th grade students. So when they graduate, they know how to handle their money. Now I ask you to please take a close look at the testimony I've prepared. The written testimony is very concise, but it's also very clear that this is a long overdue bill to be passed, and that the excuses that have been offered in the past are not necessarily anything that needs to hold this up any longer. I thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman. I'll stand for questions. Sorry, I can't hear. Is there a question?
We're going to hold questions until after Representative Thomas speaks, and then we'll have questions for all proponents.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Take a deep breath. Looks like you're running to get here, so floor is yours.
Pretty sad because I walked the whole way here, but that gives you an idea of how in great a shape I am.
We're going to require you take a physical fitness class.
All right, and with that, I resign. No, I'm kidding. No, I appreciate you all allowing me to speak. I'm an old-fashioned guy, so I believe if I'm going to be a conferee, I'm going to stand where the rest of the conferees go and speak to you just right here in front of you. I think now more than ever, financial literacy is an important tool for our up-and-coming generation to have as they prepare for their future. As taxpayers and contributing members to our economy, these students need to be prepared for what lies ahead. HB 2301 will require the financial literacy course for graduation offered by these districts in the state of Kansas. And just to kind of shorten up my testimony, recent years, I know our current treasurer and our past treasurer, who's now a congressman, have worked on legislation like this in the past. There was a deal made in 2015 between the chair of this committee and the board chairman. And so this just tweaks it just a little bit and allows financial literacy to be a requirement for graduation. And I want to thank our treasurer and our past treasurer for what they did on this over the years, and also for taking the time to talk to me about this. It's actually really cool to talk to them. So I won't take any more of your time. I just urge your support for this, and obviously I will stand for questions because I have nowhere else to go but right here with you all. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, sorry, this is Nick Myers. We don't have any audio coming through.
Sorry, thank you. Everything I said, just forget that. No. But I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions for the proponents. And looking around the room right now, I don't see any hands. I'm going to look on my screen. I'm not seeing I guess, it's pretty straightforward as far as what the bill is doing. But Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for any of the proponents. So the State Board of Ed in their testimony says that this is an attempt to erode the Kansas State Board of Education's authority. How do you respond to that?
May I speak, Mr. Chairman?
Just a second. I think Adam was getting ready to respond first.
Go
Grandmaster
ahead.
Chapel, you go ahead, sir.
Well, as a former member of the state board, I can tell you that we follow the laws that the legislature passes. It's in the Constitution, and that Article 6, Section 1 that I attached to my testimony makes it very clear that you folks are you're the ones that set the requirements, and it's up to the state board to implement.
All right. Adam, did you want to further respond?
I don't think I could say that any better.
All right. Further questions from the committee? I am not seeing any hands right now. So wait a minute. Continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This would be for any of the proponents. For our high achieving students who are on an AP track, the kind of students that I work with in my small business for college admissions consulting, they are having a hard enough time as it is fitting all the classes that they need to get into their technical programs. Mr. Chappell mentioned engineers. I've got kids taking lots of classes over the summer just to be able to fit in the AP classes that they need. How would this affect them? And a second part of that question is that if we make it count as a math credit for our public institutions in Kansas, I'm concerned that students who were following that and choose an out-of-state school may find themselves deficient in their math credits.
I guess I don't get why they would be deficient in their math credits. I'm confused by that. Could you clarify?
This bill is requiring Kansas public colleges to accept the personal financial literacy class as a half a math credit. So if they need 4 credits to get into KU, they might get into KU and they might find themselves, if they try to go to the University of Arkansas, with not enough math credits because we can't tell Arkansas to accept personal financial literacy as math credit.
So, but if this is an additional half a credit, how would they be short credits? That's what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to understand so I can answer.
This doesn't say that it's necessarily additional. What they're saying is that KU, if they're going to require full credits of math, they can use personal literacy towards that 4 credits. So that would be sufficient for Kansas, but if a student wanted to go to the University of Arkansas, the University of Oklahoma, any of our surrounding states, they would not be required to take that as a math credit. And if they had taken 4 credits, including half a credit of personal literacy, they would be short.
I can address that in the sense that anybody that's going to be getting into a field where they need those, 4 credits, not including a financial literacy, are going to be taking those classes. If you're getting into engineering or anything else and need to take your calc and your trig and your analytical geometry,
These are actually 2 different issues because the folks who are on the track to be like an engineer or something, yes, they are going to take much higher levels of math, and that's not going to be a problem for them. But maybe somebody who wants to major in psychology or something may find themselves short when they're trying to apply somewhere else. And the other issue for the engineering student is finding a place to fit another half a credit in. I can tell you that they are hardly squeezing. Yeah, it is. Maybe I'm not close enough. Okay. Yeah, that they're hardly able to squeeze in the AP classes that they need now to be competitive. And so putting another half credit on there when, they would rather take a Java or programming, something like that for that half credit, that would be difficult for them.
I can tell,
I'm at a disadvantage.
well, I can tell you, my senior year, I took AP classes, and I did not have to take a math test, and I took creative writing instead. And being someone who was new to guitar playing and music writing, I turned in song lyrics as my poetry. So obviously, none of them were number one hits, which explains my grade in that class. But I did not take a math class my senior year, but I did take AP classes. So, and I didn't feel unfit for
Did you
college I
apply
went
for
to.
engineering college?
No,
Yeah, that's what there's a different track level that I'm talking about, students who are literally taking 7 and 8 AP classes and are trying to get into selective colleges and so forth. I could see this being a real detriment.
Well, and then even with, every student has some flexibility as to what they take as their, what are the requirements, and then what do you have that are just free classes that you can take. And so for anybody that is pursuing, I don't think it would be an issue, but I think, that is something that we could look into because it is a valid question to be a part of the discussion if this bill would be moving forward. And so I would just ask the maker of this, bill to maybe we'll put in some thought, working with some people to further look into that question. Further questions from the committee? Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would there be any benefit, or is this even a possibility that somehow somebody could test out of this? In other words, take a test at the beginning of their junior year, and if they pass that test demonstrating that they have personal or financial competency, that they would not be required?
I would certainly not be opposed to that.
It's a valid suggestion to be looked at. Walt, did you have your hand raised to respond to that question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to remind the committee that there's only, if you will, 21 credits that are required by the legislature. You're the ones, the legislature passed that into law so that there are 21 credits required for graduation. Now, school districts can add additional credits. Some have 26 credits that they require. Some have 28. But the minimum requirement is 21. So this half credit of financial literacy fits right into that 21 credits as a half credit towards their graduation requirements. Now, on the question of AP classes, many students in that particular category are going to take additional areas in chemistry or in physics or perhaps in calculus, whatever. They are also able to take this as a half credit because many times when I've experienced over the years, most students in their senior year only have 1 credit of English to take. The rest of their semester is open. And many times, as you know, Senate Bill 155 students will go to a community college to get technical skills. They're out of the high school for a whole half day. They have an opportunity to earn credits towards a certification in a technical skill, but their requirements are already taken care of. They've earned those through their junior year. So in most cases, there's plenty of room for this credit to be taught and the students to learn.
Thank you, Walt.
But I think on top of that, there's many districts already teaching this as well, so we're not really reinventing the wheel here. I would just add to that.
Further questions from the committee? Representative Justice.
Mr. Thomas, would it surprise you to know that there are businesses who feel it's a matter of safety to invite their local credit union to teach their employees fiscal management because they're concerned that the loss of productivity and safety, that when their employees are stressed out about financial mistakes, they will invite a credit union to come in and say, here's why a payday loan will cost you a lot of money. So with their employees on the production line, they feel like their employee is safer because it takes the burden off of the mind when people get into good financial habits. Or does that surprise you?
Not at all. I think that's a wonderful thing.
Further questions from the committee? Seeing none, we're going to go ahead and close the proponent section of the testimony. I think my mic was off when I did acknowledge the written testimony from Mark Toombs with the Kansas Association of Realtors. Next, we're going to, we have one opponent here in person, so we're going to go ahead and go into his testimony. G.A. Bowie, you're welcome to join us, and the floor is yours.
Representative Thomas turned it off on me. He knew I was coming up here. So again, appreciate the opportunity to visit with you today about this. I think some of our concerns with this bill has already been raised with some of the questions from the representatives and other folks. I think anytime you look at adding an additional requirement, a graduation requirement or a requirement to any school, you run into a number of unintended consequences. And I think that's the challenge we're looking at right here. Personal finance is taught in many of our schools. The curriculum is taught within our schools. The curriculum is being taught in some of our math classes as well. Consumer math is a class that has a number of personal finance components to it. We also see personal finance being taught in many of our career and technical programs as entry level or components of those career and technical programs. But as you start talking about requirements and putting requirements on local boards of education and local schools to have an additional graduation requirements, there's the possibility that they're going to have to remove something, to take something away. So some of our school districts do have additional or on top of credits available for schools, for kids to take, but that's not the case in all of our school districts. Many of our programs today, we've continued to add credits for kids because we know there are important elements out there that we want our kids to have when they graduate. And this committee actually talked about one the other day with civics and the civics exam, and we can probably continue to go out there, computer literacy, and we can continue to add those types of courses. But at some point in time, there's a limit to what our kids can handle. And that's what we need to understand. Is there a better way of getting this out there? And when I talk about, I talked to 8 superintendents before I came in here today on my weekly call with them. All of them offer personal finance. 4 of them require personal finance. None required as a math class, but all of them allow it to be used for a math credit if need be. So let's say a student has been unsuccessful throughout high school. They go through math, they go through Algebra 1, they go through geometry, they go through Algebra 2. They can't pass a semester of Algebra 2. They'll allow a substitute class of personal finance, or consumer math, often is what we call it, to be substituted for that math course. But once again, when you go out there and when you ask to require that, again, I think that's where the state board comes into play there. They understand, and they have the understanding of what different school districts are doing out there and what the unintended consequences could be for districts. Again, many of our districts don't have someone that's certified to teach this class. It's a business level class that it's being taught in, or a consumer math class that's being taught in. So they don't have those teachers. So it would require additional certification or taking another class away from a teacher that they're already teaching so they can teach this particular class. So I think those are the challenges we run into as organizations with making this a requirement. We appreciate the class. We feel the class is important. All the elements that you guys talked about it being valuable to our kids, we all agree with. It's the delivery that I think we questioned. What's the best way to do it? And I think local school districts can handle how the delivery should be pushed forward, because maybe it's not a class, maybe it's embedded within other curriculum, which Dr. Nordensweiner talked about, being embedded in other curriculum, or maybe it is a class within a business class or some other way. So I think those are the challenges that we have as an organization as we look at requiring that class. And I'm happy to stand for questions if you have any.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the conferee? Representative Sanders.
So, Mr. Buey, what's your take on Mr. Chappell's interpretation of the Constitution relative to who has authority to set the curriculum?
Well, I think that's why we have an elected state board of education, the way it's put out there to help interpret what needs to happen and what works within our schools.
Would it be proper to allow Mr. Chappell to respond to that?
That's fine, yeah.
I'd be glad to. If you're able to hear, can you hear?
Yes, sir.
If you'll notice, the way this is set up on the past page of my testimony, it says, Section 2 of Article 6 says, the State Board of Education shall have general supervision. The first article is that the state legislature shall organize and change education as may be required by law. It is up to the legislature to set up the 21 credits. The requirements for graduation are a legislative decision. It's up to the state board to implement. Again, it's right in the state constitution. It's been going on since 1919. That's over 100 years. The precedent's already there. Let's go ahead and get this done.
Representative Sanders, you have another question?
No, I was just going to say thank you.
I didn't do it.
You're welcome.
But you're welcome. Representative Collins?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering, the concern about if this is required, like for half a credit, that it'd take away from something else. I was just wondering if you had any examples of what the something else is that's required now.
Well, it may not be a required course, but let's say I'm taking career and technical courses. So I take my required curriculum, my math, science, social studies, and any other local requirements. And I'm doing 2 different career and technical programs. So I may not be able to complete one of those programs if I need if it requires 3 courses or 4 courses to complete a business accounting course. I may not be able to take that 4th course because I need to complete this course. Or the case of a agriculture class, I may not be able to, I may have to take one of those classes back to fit this course in.
All right, thank you.
To follow up on that, 4 courses for these alternative classes, is that throughout high school or is that just specifically senior year?
It's throughout high school. I mean, oftentimes you have an entry-level class as a freshman, and then you may have multiple classes as the junior, senior, and then what we're doing more and more often right now is a career-based work experience where we're getting kids out and about in our career-based work experience to get them more experience in the jobs.
Okay. I loved business accounting. It was one of my favorite classes, actually. All right, other questions? I have Representative Featherstone.
Thank you. I'm curious if you have any feeling or statistical data that shows which is more influential, a parent telling a child leaving the home either to secondary education or to the workforce, giving instruction on finances, in other words, don't ever take one of those credit cards they offer you, it's a bad idea, or sitting in a class that's required that they may not want to take and have perhaps a hostile attitude of missing out on their chosen elective to sit in this class. Do you have an idea of what's a bigger influence on the child?
I would like to think as a parent of 4 that the parent conversation and those lessons that are taught at home are going to be greater than what's going to be taught in the classroom if a classroom I don't want to be in.
Thank you.
Representative Bergkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Actually, probably a good follow-up to that. So I think it's pretty apparent today that maybe a lot of parents don't have very good financial savvy. So to me, I think in high school, or a lot of college kids are like, hey, why are we taking this class? Because I'm never going to use it later in life, which sometimes you do come full circle and you do use it. But, would you say, do we owe it to our kids to teach them things that we know they're going to use for certain in life and to ensure that when they graduate that they're well equipped to handle like day-to-day life decisions?
I think it's important in schools that we cover as much as possible to help our kids be successful in school. But I can just tell you that as we continue to add those items that we know are important for our kids, that we're getting to the point of overloading the kids with what they need. And I think as we continue to take things that are not being taught maybe at home or things that are not being taught in another curriculum that we feel like they really need, and we continue to take that as an add-on, those are additional items that it makes it more challenging, especially as we're trying to looking at more career and technical type of programs. To me, this is curriculum that would be could taught within that. It could be taught within a freshman orientation class. It could be taught within be taught in conjunction with another middle level class. I think there's a lot of opportunities where this curriculum could be taught. I don't think it has to be a required high school class for it to be taught to be successful.
Thank you.
Would you support taxpayer funds going to me if I teach my children financial literacy? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Representative Hubert.
How hard would it be to develop that kind of class or, a test that somebody could opt out of this? The basic information that is a part of the class. A lot of students who are good at math and are going down a high-tech track, I appreciate financial literacy might not, you don't have to be, an engineer, but even, I think there's a basic level of, a test that we could take so that students could basically, do that without taking the class. And we show that they're proficient with the basic information that we want to teach.
Honestly, you can do that with many classes, and I would say this class would be one you could do that with.
Okay.
But if I could follow up with that, Mr. Chair, the challenge with having courses that you test out of, oftentimes it's not the information that's important, it's the conversation that's important, and the examples, and you put those things out there. And so that's why I would recommend that if we want to look at this seriously, we look at all kinds of options for this curriculum to be taught. Just having the state board have this this curriculum needs to be taught somewhere throughout high school. If a district has it in place right now, that's awesome, that's great. Or if they want to add it, that's super. But if it's built into another curriculum, let's not change what's already there. Because again, as we're trying to ask kids to do more and encourage kids to do more in our high schools, and we're trying to get kids into work-based environments their junior and senior year, those are going to take opportunities away from the classroom. But as businesses are saying, we want you in these work-based learning environments. And the more we try to get kids in those, it's going to take less opportunities. It's going to take more opportunities away from traditional classes in our schools.
Well, and again, that's why I was looking for a certain segment based on a previous question as far as, for certain students where I believe that they could test out and do it in a way that would meet everybody's need for.
Well, and again, I'm not trying to argue with you. We could test out by doing, helping me, I have to answer a question on figuring simple interest. But it doesn't give me the downfalls of a high interest or low interest type of loan.
Yeah, that could be a part of a test out procedure too. You can set up a class in order to get that kind of interaction.
Obviously you can, yeah. No arguments there. You can definitely set it up, but the long-term effects may not be what you could gather within a normal traditional.
Well, those are the students that I'm not that concerned on. It's the ones that right now when you go to make a purchase and then they struggle with making change because you give them 27 cents on top of the $5 bill, and that messes up their thought process, and they can't make the change. So
I don't think that's what this class is about, though.
No, it's not. But those are those that struggle with those basic skills are the ones that are more likely going to be the ones that aren't learning the basic financial literacy skills that we want them to learn.
I don't know that we have that data, but point well taken.
Again, I guarantee you that everybody has that anecdotal information in regards to students that are, that struggle with.
I think we have very wealthy people that struggle with financial.
Well, yeah, that goes without saying. All right, further questions?
Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Is there any data available that where this is offered as an elective, what percentage of students choose to take it?
That would we'd have to talk to Dr. Nuance-Winder about that, and probably something to be collected.
I think Brad is still on the call. Brad, could you answer that?
The information that I shared with you, we have the number of students that have taken the courses, but we would not be able to draw it down to whether or not they actually took it in a school that had it as a high school graduation requirement or not. We just had total numbers of students that are taking the courses.
And what percentage is that? Is it like 90% take something like this, or 50%, or do you have any idea?
On the fact sheet, if you're looking at in 2020, 13,763 students took it, but that doesn't tell us whether it was a percent of that graduating class, because some of those could have been their sophomore year, junior year. It could have, so we don't know what percent of a cohort class, because we just follow courses that meet the qualification and how many kids took it. So I would not be able to give you any kind of an accurate what percent of the kids.
Thank you.
Representative Stogsdill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wondered, I heard some conversation about kids being able to test out on this subject. And I'm just wondering if that was going to be fair to all kids across the entire state. Wouldn't that have to be a standardized test?
Is that for Brad? Somebody needs to turn off their mic also, or mute.
We
I
currently
hope
have
that-
test out programs within our schools, so it wouldn't necessarily have to be a state assessment.
It's a local control an issue.
Could be modified or could be enhanced. We're definitely
If you're not muted, go ahead and mute at this time. We're getting,
there is no simple thing that can be done.
Okay, yeah, I'm just wondering how that would apply to students across the state if this was a quasi requirement for passing out of high school, and there's no standardized test for.
Jerry, I'm going to stop
this.
you now.
Yeah.
We need to find out who has got the background. Gary, can you mute? Gary Warner? Okay.
I don't hear it anymore.
All right.
Representative Stogsdill, you want to try again? Sorry, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Again, I was just wondering if kids can test out of this subject area and it's not a standardized test, how is that fair to all students across the state? It looks like we could have 300 tests out there, kids taking it to test out of this with no standardization. And I don't see how that is a good way to assess their skill level or understanding level in personal finance.
A second, we're still trying to
Chairperson, I'm sorry to bother you. We can't hear anything offline. I don't know what's happening.
They're telling me all the mics in the room. Yeah. My audio is off, so I'm not sure why I'm getting that feedback.
All right.
Check one.
If you can hear us, raise your hand. I see hands going up.
And the bill is passed.
Yes. Okay, we've passed that. No. Committee, we pretty much had closed the hearing down because of the technical difficulties. Tomorrow, if there wants to be further questions or discussion, I'll allow that tomorrow. With the possibility of working bills tomorrow, I am going to suggest that everybody try to be here, and we'll make sure we have the chairs and space available. Everybody will be required to wear a mask. And we've closed the hearing, and I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting, but help me get the word out. And Deborah, if you could send out an email in regards to tomorrow, that would help get the communication out. My apologies to the committee that we had the technical difficulties, and I'm sure even for IT, there's learning opportunities when things like this happen. So, Representative Burkamp, did you have a question? Representative Stockstill, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Will we, can you give us a look at what bills we might be working tomorrow?
Okay. Right now, the ones that I'm considering would be 2038, and then I believe the other one is 2039, which is the civics bill. 2038 is the professional liability insurance coverage. So that's the ones I'm considering right now.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good question. So, committee, thank you. And again, I'm sure this was good learning for, all right. All right. We are adjourned and plan on being here in person tomorrow. Thank you.